Bellator, you suck. You absolutely suck. You need improvement and you need it fast. And I'm here to help you. Before I do though, my name is Rahul J. Chan, this is the Battle Camp. Thank you very much for joining me. If you're new to the channel, please do consider subscribing. So first and foremost, the word suck isn't something that is generally part of my vocabulary, especially in this context. I was just trying to pay homage to one Chelpy signing from when he called out Anderson Silva all those years ago. Anderson Silva, you suck. But the sentiment remains the same. I've been thinking about Bellator for the last 6 months or a year or something along those lines. And I've just been watching them churn out the same trudge over and over and over and over. And I'm sick and tired of it. I'm sick and tired of it because I feel like they're in desperate need of a huge rebuild. And if you're familiar with my channel, if you've seen my content before, you will know I don't make notes. I don't sit around writing things down. I turn the camera on, I hit record and I start talking. That's what I do. But I feel so strongly about this that I sat down earlier on today and I made a list. You just made the list, like Chris Jericho used to say. I made a list about things that Bellator can do to improve this product because, God help me, they need a shot in the arm. Right? And here's my first recommendation. As a man that is speaking from a position of authority, they need to get rid of these Grand Prix, right? First and foremost, why do they call it a Grand Prix? It's not a fucking race. Just call it a tournament. Just call it a tournament. But in fact, don't call it anything because you don't even need it. You don't need this rigid structure of pre-planned fights that nobody cares about. Do you care about them? I don't. The one fight that I cared about, Yoel Romero against Rumble Johnson, got cancelled because it was an injury. It happens. But they just got rid of the fight. They just replaced Yoel Romero at the time with another fighter. And we lost that fight, right? Because they're so married to this concept of a Grand Prix, which is actually a tournament. And I just don't get it. It makes zero sense to me. Does anyone care about these Grand Prix? I don't. I genuinely don't, and I'm yet to find someone that does, right? Because apart from having this rigid structure, like, all right, let's kind of break it down a little bit. Bellator is an organization that is exponentially smaller than the UFC. They're not even competition to the UFC. So what they need to do is be dynamic, right? Because if you're smaller, it allows you to make changes quicker and be dynamic, try new things. You don't have this big machine behind you that is so hard to turn. But what they're doing is imposing these structures and this bureaucracy on themselves, stopping them from doing that, right? And this Yoel Romero Rumble Johnson fight is a prime example of it because we had a fight that a lot of people were excited to see. Yoel got injured or he had an eye problem or whatever, so he couldn't fight. They replaced him with a Brazilian fighter. To be fair, that fight between him and Johnson was exciting. Johnson is now injured, and then Yoel has since fought and lost, and that fight has kind of lost its luster a little bit, right? Now, if they didn't have this structure, who knows? They could have just pushed it out a month or two, gone to a different gone to a different sanctioning body and had the fight in a different state, and Yoel could have passed his eye exam, and we could have seen that fight happen in Bellator, but we didn't. They missed that opportunity. Aside from that, I feel as though because of the structure, it doesn't allow fighters to just have organic beefs amongst each other. Do you know what I mean? Because they know a month in advance, a year in advance, who they're fighting if they progress through this tournament. They know, all right, if I win this quarterfinal fight, then I'll fight him in the semi-final, then it'll be one of these 2 or 3 fighters in the final. Like, there's no need for anyone to talk shit to anyone because everyone knows that they're on this path to a potential title fight if they win all their fights. So all they have to do is get their head down and train. There's no need for anyone to try and make a bit of noise, make a bit of racket, get a bit of attention and get the spotlight on them where it's almost like, oh, well, let's give him a title shot because he's getting a bit of momentum behind him. Like, they're not, this structure that they've imposed on everyone, it even takes away from fighters trying to promote themselves because they kind of don't have any need to. It's stupid. It doesn't make any sense to me. The other thing that I think they need to stop doing is, why do they have so many shows, especially those weekends where they have a show on a Friday and a Saturday? What is the point? Why do you've got a thin roster as it is. You need to put a card on with what, 8-10 fights, but then you go and say, all right, let's do it on a Friday and a Saturday. So now we've got 16 to 20 fights over one weekend. So you're splitting up the 3 or 4 good fights that you actually have that people might be interested in, rather than just having one solid juicy card. You've got 2 half decent fights on one card and 2 half decent fights on the other card, both on 2 days, one after the other, that nobody knows is happening anyway. I'm going to come to that. Like, what is the point? Like, I appreciate that Bellator is owned by Viacom, which is a media outlet, and maybe they're the ones dictating that we need to have X amount of shows a year, right? So this is a cost-effective way of doing it, because you just bang out 2 shows in the space of 2 days. It's one set, hiring out one venue. Logistically, it's easier, blah, 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 etc., etc., etc. But us as fans are the ones paying for it because nobody cares. Nobody cares. Like, the cards are just spread way too thin with these double shows, and nobody has that much of an allegiance to Bellator, a relationship with Bellator where you care about watching every single event, right? So when you haven't even built that bond with a fan base, you can't expect us to tune in twice in 2 days with 2 thinly spread cards. It makes no sense. It makes 0 sense. The other thing that needs drastic improvement is Bellator's web presence, right? I remember a while back, I think I even made a video about this a couple of years ago. There's something had happened in Bellator where I went on Google and I typed in Bellator in Google, and the first link to Bellator just directed me to the YouTube channel. Like, I literally struggled to find the Bellator website. I couldn't find it. And then at that time, I thought, fucking hell, like, this is basic rudimentary shit. How are you guys fucking this up? Do you know what I mean? Like, there are so many opportunities out there to grow the profile of your fighters using the internet that are just not being taken, right? Here's an idea. Why don't you start creating your own content? You don't even have to hire people in-house. You can hire people that already have a presence on YouTube. I'm not talking about myself. I'm talking about much bigger channels that can come in and interview your fighters. I'm not talking about Food Truck Diaries either. Don't do that. But there are so many different avenues that you can explore, and you can reach out, say, why don't you interview Aaron Pico? Why don't you interview AJ McKee? Why don't you interview whoever else is the up and coming guy or girl that you want to put your company on the shoulders of? Do you know what I mean? Like, create your own content. Like, get someone and say, right, this is going to go on the Bellator channel. Hire them. Hire a production company. It's not hard. And be creative. Make a presence online. Like, I just made a video talking about Morning Combat and the podcast Room Service Diaries. They're both affiliated with Showtime. It's a no-brainer to get someone like an Aaron Pico, who I just mentioned. Even if not just an Aaron Pico, Gegard Mousasi, who's a champion in Bellator, who people are talking about, oh, he's a guy that could give Izzy a tough fight. Like, he has been fighting for longer than HCTVs were around. And I mean that. Like, he's been fighting for like 15, 20, 30, I don't know how long. He's been fighting for years. He's probably got like 50 fights. He's got stories. He's fought in Japan. He's fought all around the world. The only time I see him talk is on Ara Hawani's The MMA Hour, and he's very entertaining. Let people see that. Promote him. You're a promotion. Promote your fighters. Like, there is a massive MMA... what's the right way of saying it? Podcast show. There's a massive MMA show, right? That is powered by Showtime, the same platform that your fights air on. Why don't you have a better relationship between each other? And it's not on the Morning Combat guys to do that. It's on you guys to go there and say, hi, why don't you interview this guy? Why don't you do this? Why don't you help us here? I'm sure they would if they're getting paid for it. The thing that this goes on to my next point. They need to innovate more, right? So I'm talking about growing the web presence, having new ideas online. And with that being said, like, I want to, as a fan, be wowed about something. I want to be excited about things. But I'm not. I'm not excited by Bellator because I don't see any excitement in people at Bellator. It just all feels all kind of mundane, and it feels as though everyone just, all right, I've got a fight booked, it's on this date, better start training. And like, I don't want to kind of outright call Scott Coker out, because I appreciate a lot of people have a lot of respect for Scott Coker, and you'll be hard pressed to find people that have anything bad to say about him. But I'm talking about fighters and managers and people in the industry. But I'm a fan, and I want you to do your job, promote. Because what I've got at the moment is just an events company that arranges fights, an events and logistics company that arranges MMA fights, right? There's no bells and whistles around it. And I get it that Scott Coker isn't the most comfortable in front of a camera. He's not a guy that's going to be animated and try and sell you an event. That's not his style. I appreciate that. Everyone has their own personality. But at the same time, you are a promotion. So if you're not going to be the driving force behind it as the top boy in charge, you need to find people that can and will do that job, right? Because it's stale. The product is stale. It needs help. I made a video before saying, is PFL taking over Bellator as the second largest MMA organization in North America? And they're innovating. They're trying things. They're trying things with the way they present the show. They're trying to be different. They're trying to differentiate themselves from the other brands out there, right? One thing that because obviously I'm a big wrestling fan, right? And I heard Eric Bischoff say, when he was running WCW, which was miles behind WWF at the time, he sat down, looked at WWF and made a list of all the things that he wants to be different with his brand. Like, this is what I want to do differently to what the WWE. This is what they do. This is what we're going to do. This is what they do. This is what we're going to do. And this is what Bellator need. They need to look at the UFC and say to themselves, how are we going to be different? Why not? Why not introduce a 165-pound weight division? What's stopping you? What's stopping you? Like, Khabib came in and did it in an instance, right? So it can't be anything to do with the commissions and unified rules of MMA and all of that bollocks. Who cares? Does anyone care about winning a Bellator World Championship right now? No, nobody cares. So make a product that we care about as fans. Like, this is the perfect opportunity to do it, because what we're getting right now from the UFC is the same thing. Tired, mundane, subpar cards on a weekly basis from that UFC center, whatever it's called. And everything just looks the same. Like, nowadays, like, there was a time when I would, if I didn't stay awake for a UFC event, I would make sure first thing in the morning on a Sunday I was watching it. Nowadays, I can just not watch it and just look on Wikipedia or whatever to see what the results were. Okay, fine, he won, she won. Okay, good, fine. And just, that's it. Get on with my day. I don't even bother doing that with Bellator. So the onus is on you as an organization to try to change things around. And the only thing that you're doing different is these bloody Grand Prix that is actually weighing you down. It's not allowing you to make fun matchups. It's not allowing you to pivot quickly because these two guys had a fallout. So let's just get them in the octagon and let them fight. Not the octagon, the cage or whatever you call it, and let them fight. It just doesn't let you. It doesn't allow you to do that. So, in conclusion, less shows. Let's get rid of the Grand Prix. Let's get rid of the Friday and Saturday shows. Improve your web presence. Use the Morning Combat duo. Lean on them. Get your fighters on their podcast, on their show. Get them to interview your fighters. Like, look, it's sad, right? Because Morning Combat, you might have like a big tentpole Bellator event on a weekend, but they'll open with a UFC fight night if it's going on the same weekend. Like, doesn't that say something? There might be a show where Bellator have 2 titles being defended, but there's a UFC fight night where Bilal Muhammad's fighting fucking Vicente Luque, and that's what they lead with. Doesn't that tell you all you need to know? You need to grow up. You need to grow up, man. You need to, like, This is just an organization that is coasting. It's just every week, every month, every year, the same thing over and over and over again. And I appreciate your roster is not as expansive as the UFC's, but there was a reason why we used to get excited about Strikeforce events, because they were few and far between, and when they came around, there were fights that we cared about. All I want to do is care about a fight. That's all I want to do. Right, I live in London. I went to the last Bellator event where Michael Venom Page faced Douglas Lima. Did I go now? Did I go this last weekend? I hadn't even heard of the guy that MVP fought. Why am I going to spend £100 on a ticket, £80 on alcohol, £50 on an Uber to watch a fight that I don't really care about? And that's no slight on MVP. I'm a fan of MVPs. He's a London boy. Like, I want him to do well. But why am I going to go and spend all of that money to go to Wembley Arena to watch this event that, in my heart of hearts, I don't really care? I'm just going because it's an MMA event, local to me. Like, if you can't even get me, someone that fucking sits around talking about fights as a hobby, to go to an event that is literally 6-7 miles down the road, 10 miles at a push down the road, like, what chance do you have? It's embarrassing at this point, man. Honestly, it's embarrassing. Like, I don't know what restrictions Scott Coker has at the moment, what's being imposed on him by the powers that be, Viacom or whoever it is, blah, blah, blah. I don't know. But surely there's enough room for change and there's enough room to innovate. Surely you can sit down and say, you know what? We need to switch things up a little bit. Let's get rid of these Grand Prix. Let's ask them upstairs, can we just do less shows? We don't have a roster that can satisfy the requirements for these many dates because it's making the quality of our product suffer. Let's tighten it out a little bit. Let's make people wait for events. And then when the event comes, there's like 5 or 6 recognizable names on there. You think, fucking hell, I might give that a watch. I might watch that. And while you're waiting for these events to happen, let's start creating content. Let's start keeping fighters' names in our hearts and minds while they're not fighting. Like, the best time to interview a fighter isn't a week before his fight or her fight. Like, I just made a video about this Morning Combat podcast with Glover Teixeira. I know he's got a fight booked, but he was relaxed. He wasn't just thinking about, oh, I got to fight him in a couple of days. He was talking, telling a story. Let us get to know him a little bit. That's what Bellator need to do. Not just, oh, so-and-so's got a fight coming up, let's make him available for media interviews. Let's start promoting them when they're not in camp, when they're happy, when they're chilled out, when they don't mind having a laugh. It's not rocket science. But yeah, that went on longer than I anticipated, but it needed to be said. It needed to be said. If you have any ideas that you think can improve Bellator, please put them in the comments below. If you think any of my ideas have flaws, please highlight them to me, and I will gladly tell you why you're wrong. And if you've enjoyed this video, subscribe to the channel, like this video, share it with a friend, and I'll catch you guys next time.